everybody, back again with Tank Review Tuesday. This time, I've got my favorite infantry fighting vehicle, the BMP-2. My very first experience with the BMP-2 IFV is actually not from Armored Warfare, but from another game for several years ago. How many of you remember World in Conflict by Sierra and Massive Entertainment? Yes! Ever since I started playing Armored Warfare, I have been absolutely excited about getting in to the BMP-2. Well, what is the BMP-2? The BMP-2 is a continuation off of the famous BMP-1, Soviet Infantry Fighting Vehicle. The BMP-1 was one of the very first infantry fighting vehicles ever mass-produced. Now, it's important to note the distinction between an IFV and an APC. An APC, or Armored Personnel Carrier, is basically just what its name implies. It is an armored personnel carrier, but it lacks any kind of heavy weaponry. An infantry fighting vehicle, however, can not only carry a squad of personnel, but it also has large anti-personnel, anti-vehicle, or anti-armor weapons on top of it. The BMP-2 was a continuation of the design of the BMP-1, which, while revolutionary, was quickly outmatched. The BMP-2's most notable improvements are its larger turret and a 30mm chain gun, on top of its anti-tank guided missile. Additionally, the biggest visual change that you'll see, aside from the larger turret on the BMP-2, is the wonderful piece of Soviet technology known as the Mark I log. I do love that Mark I log. One of the other big impacts of the BMP-2 over the BMP-1 is the fact that instead of carrying 8 troops, it now only carries 7. However, in Armored Warfare, that's probably not going to be a factor whatsoever. It still remains to be seen whether or not the amphibious side of these vehicles will be implemented and how it will be implemented in Armored Warfare. Both the BMPs are technically amphibious vehicles, so it would be really fun to see that availability. I would love nothing more than to be able to drive across a large body of water in the middle of a map and surprise an enemy on the other side. In addition to its service with the Soviet Union and Russian Federation, the BMP-2 has seen service with numerous other militaries around the world. It's been in combat since 1975, starting with the Angolan Civil War, and has continued to fight in various wars, including the Iraq-Iran War, the war in South Odessa, all the way into modern conflicts such as the Syrian Civil War and the Yemeni coup d'etat. One of the other interesting factors with the BMP over other nations, including NATO, was the fact that the BMP offered gun ports and periscopes so that the infantry inside could fire from the vehicle while it was moving. It also had top hatches to allow for infantry to easily exit the vehicle if the rear doors were blocked or tight quarters. One of the major disadvantages to the early BMP models was that it had its fuel tanks stored in its external hatch doors on the back of the IFV. This meant that if the vehicle took a direct hit into the back in the crew section, the troops inside would be sprayed with hot, burning gasoline. But again, here in Armored Warfare, that really does seem to be a bit of a moot point, as you don't actually have any personnel that you're carrying. So how does the BMP-2 handle here in Armored Warfare? Well, much like its predecessor, the BMP-1, it has absolutely horrid gun depression. And when I say it has horrid gun depression, I mean it has no gun depression. Given the shape of the chassis and the placement and size of the turret, you can't shoot down. It's a physical impossibility, so don't even try. What that means You can't do standard stuff like coming up over a small incline and going haul down, but given the nature of the armor of this vehicle anyway, and the fact that it's lower glacis, while incredibly angled, is also incredibly large. So, even if you could go haul down, you probably wouldn't want to. Some alternatives that you can do instead of going haul down are, because of the vehicle's low profile, and because it has such a low profile turret, is to actually just go hide behind somebody. Either hide behind an allied tank that's bigger than you, where you can hide the majority of your vehicle behind them, and just have your turret peeking over. You could also do the same thing with low rises in terrain, rocks, destroyed vehicles or buildings. It really does give you that optional advantage. Of course, it's also an infantry fighting vehicle, which means it has a really good camo rating. So, you can see here in the background video playing, I actually have this vehicle camouflaged. And the camo rating does a really good job of keeping me very, very well hidden. Use the target designations, and you can come up behind people and waylay them with that 30mm chain gun. Compared to the predecessor, it's BMP-1P, you have the same ATGM, but you do more damage with your main armament. Where the BMP-1 had that 75mm gun that could fire the high explosive or the high explosive anti-tank. And on average, the heat round with the BMP-1 would do somewhere between 280 and 400 damage, depending on the upgrade options and retrofits that you had. But you had to wait 6 seconds to reload that shot. Versus the 30mm chain gun, you've got 30 rounds to go through, and in the stock configuration, without any of the upgrades, without any of the retrofits unlocked, you can do up to 75 damage per hit if you hit a critical component, which, if you're shooting at a main battle tank, you're pretty much only going to be hitting critical components, because that's the only place that the armor's weak enough to penetrate with your AP rounds. So you're going to do far more damage in the same length of time, where you could say get 2 of the 75mm heat rounds off. You can get all 30 rounds out of your chain gun off. You're going to do 800 damage or so with those 2 heat rounds, or you're going to do 2100 damage with the 30mm here. Use of the ATGM is, the way I like to use the ATGM is to finish off targets that still have 200 or 300 plus health on them, where I know my reload time on the 30mm is currently about 7 seconds. Switching over to my ATGM is only going to take me 4. If I'm already in a stopped position and detected, then I'm risking the same amount no matter what I do. Or if I'm in a position where I'm not detected, then I'm just going to swap over to the ATGM in a 4-second flash, fire off that missile, and have it hit the target, and then immediately switch back to my 30mm, which only takes about 2 seconds to switch back, and at that point, it's fully reloaded, so I can move on to another target. The biggest thing I would say with playstyle with this vehicle is you utilize the speed of this vehicle to your utmost advantage. You'll notice I don't stop moving unless I'm in a spot where I can safely be defended against incoming rounds. I'm behind something, or I'm on a low ridge, or they're far enough away that they'll probably miss me. I'm also in a position where I can stay undetected while shooting at them. But that's not how I like to play. I really do like to be aggressive with this vehicle. The vehicle is so fast and maneuverable, you could just rush around the battlefield, go left, go right, go center, and you can relocate, and you can really, truly give your team, both in PvE and PvP, a major advantage when you're with a vehicle that's, you know, so maneuverable. So because it's so maneuverable, if you're going into a PvP battle, one of the big things you want to do is you want to use that maneuverability to get out in front of your main battle tanks into areas that you are not necessarily sure that you think the enemy's going to come through. You don't want to go by yourself. You definitely want to have a main battle tank or a tank destroyer back behind you, and you can rush up, spot the enemy, highlight the enemy, and then immediately run back for cover. Because you're that fast. By the time the enemy realizes you're there, you've been spotted, you've been able to actually get back behind cover and safely retreated back away. But because you're so fast, you can also use that speed with your scouting advantage and your camo rating to go and find the weak spots in the front line with the enemy contact. As you'll see later on in this video, I do just that. I play it a little bit cautiously, I'm looking for targets, and then I move forward and I realize that there's a gap that I can take advantage of and get back behind this Leopard 1 that was going face-to-face with the main battle tanks on my team. And, I mean, you know, it's a Leopard 1, so they would have probably been able to very easily take care of him, but that's not the point. The point is that I got back behind him, and before he even realized I was there and could actually do something about it, I designated him and was doing full damage by shooting right into his engine block. So, how about we take a look at that PvP battle I was just talking about. Here we are, snowy map. Can't for the life of me remember the name of the map, but I'm sure anybody who plays Armored Warfare and plays a lot of PvP could probably tell me exactly what map it is. This is actually the first PvP matchup I ever played in the BMP-2, so it was a little bit different experience for me. Now, as mentioned before, here I am. I'm out front, I'm with a main battle tank, and I'm looking for a target, or I'm looking for gaps in that defensive line that I can get through. Kind of getting a little goofy here, trying to get up on the ridge, but obviously, you know, it's not super tank. I can't fly up the sides of cliffs, or what I should say, it's not horses in Skyrim. I can't go vertical up the side of a mountain. Oh, yeah, I went there. I did. So, I see the enemy is back over by the encounter capture point. They are now engaging with the main battle tanks there. And I'm noticing that there's a sizable gap here between the two tank positions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around through the backside of this street and just use the speed, and I've effectively gone right through their defensive line, and now I'm back behind them. And here exactly is the point. I'm back behind this enemy Leopard, and I've given him a healthy dose of surprise butt sex. Now, the rest of this match did not go well for me or the team. Pretty much, I'm going to get one more kill here, which is this tank destroyer that comes rushing past. And there he is, and I've shot him all up, I've killed him. But the rest of the match did not go well, and pretty much after that, it was all downhill from there. It was still a fun match, and it demonstrated exactly how you should try and use this kind of vehicle. You should definitely use that speed and the stealthiness and the maneuverability to look for gaps in that line, punch through, get behind, assist your team, and cause all sorts of damage. But using that mobility, you can use that mobility in PvE. So here's a PvE battle where you can really see how staying mobile across the map gives you the opportunity to just clean up in terms of damage and kills and assists. So, here we are. This is a PvE matchup. I believe this is Operation Wildfire, but I can't remember 100%. I know I've played it enough. Operation Wildfire just sounds like the correct name. So what I'm doing here is I've gotten myself up on the far ridge from the defense point, and I'm using my stealth ability, and I'm sitting so far out of range that they can't see me, and I'm just shooting the enemy targets with impunity. Which is, you know, it's one of those things that with an IFV, you definitely want to do. You definitely don't want to put yourself in a position where you can have things with large guns shooting at you. So I'm going to sit up here on this ridge, and I'm just going to take my time, line up my shots, and take out as many targets as I can as they come into view range. But I'm going to use the mobility so that when the cap defense changes, I know where the spawns are going to pop up, and I want to go and relocate. And I can relocate really rapidly in this vehicle. I'm going to go and I'm going to relocate here to my other favorite spot to be. Now, normally this is where I would take a standard take and I would go hull down, but because you cannot go hull down in this vehicle, I'm just going to go and put myself right up next to this rock so that I can protect the majority of my tank against incoming shots. Now you'll notice that while I was moving, I fired several rounds into the ground, and that was just to clear the last 3 to 5 rounds out of my gun. The reason for doing this is basically the same reason you would reload a standard assault rifle, you know, hit that nervous reload button when playing any other FPS. You definitely don't want to run out of ammunition right in the middle of an intense firefight, especially not against something that's got a gun that can kill you. Now, the BMP-2, the chain gun on this thing is actually really, really good, and I've had several situations playing now where I've ended up just bum rushing right up to an enemy tank. The enemy tank will put a round into me. He's got more health than I do, but I still manage to just wreck him because I've got the 30 rounds of 30mm to keep shooting at him. So I'm sitting up here on this ridge, I'm defending the second cap point, and I'm just using, again, I'm using the stealth ability of this tank, and I haven't been spotted yet. So it gives me an advantage. Tried to take shots at this T-72, but neither my ATGM nor my rounds, because he's giving me the front of the tank, are going to penetrate, so I just designate him and hopefully one of my team members will do it for me. Again, using these rocks as cover, making sure that if I am going to be spotted, that they're not going to be able to do serious damage to me, that their incoming rounds will probably just hit the rock or hit the ground around me. Using that mobility again, I'm going to take off and I'm going to go head towards the next spawn point. I'm also going to try and see if I can get the secondary objectives, But it's about this point that I realize, okay, the one I was going to has already been taken care of, and the other one is too far away. I'm not going to make it in time. Friendly Swingfire, though, did decide that he was going to do it, and he pulls off the secondary objective win just ridiculous. A second to spare, I swear. Yeah, see? Second to spare. So I've used the mobility, but I'm across the river. I'm going to try and give him some assistance over here, but the defense point has changed, so the new spawns are popping up, and I definitely don't want to be across the river with these tanks shooting at me. I'm not directly spotted. They have a line of sight on me, which is actually kind of surprising that I'm not directly spotted. It's really bizarre. So I'm going to use my 30mm chain gun. I'm just going to start wasting these guys as I back out of the situation and get myself back up on this ridge. My other favorite spot to be for this last defense point. So, normally in a main battle tank, I would usually just sit down here on this map and shoot at these targets. I'd actually sit up a little bit closer to the defense point itself. But again, because this gun has absolutely no gun depression whatsoever, I can't actually do that. So once I'm done dealing with the enemies down here by the river, I'm going to want to shoot at more targets, and I can see them popping up on my mini-map. They're popping up in the exact opposite direction. So I'm going to go run up, and I'm going to start rushing the other direction to try and help out my team. And, you know, keep in mind here that I've done a ridiculous amount of damage, and I've had a huge number of kills. And again, you know, I can use the mobility of this vehicle to go and start rushing in one direction to try and help when there's no more targets and they're popping back up. I can just turn around and go right back at them. Of course, it would help if I did stay at one spot, and I probably would have done a lot better if I had stayed where I would normally like to have stayed, but I decided I wanted to play the vehicle quite a bit more aggressively than I would normally. There again, another kill for the team, another assist for me, and at this point there's only one guy left, and I am going to take the kill on him. Use the mobility, get back in front of my teammates, rush up, and take him out. That ends the match for me with 14 kills, just one short of the Destroyer medal. But even without that medal, it was a really good game, and this seems to be a recurring theme for me. I constantly do extremely well in the BMP-2. It's really kind of surprising. I consistently walk away with 5,000+ damage done in a PvE matchup, which, for an armored fighting vehicle that only has a 30mm chain gun, that's actually pretty impressive. And it really is one of my favorite vehicles. The combination of that 30mm rapid-fire chain gun and that quick switching ATGM, you're going to be able to put out a lot of damage. Throw in that mobility, you can throw yourself around the battlefield, and you can end up doing significantly more damage than other vehicles at the same tier. The setup that I'm rocking on this right now, I have more armor-piercing 30mm rounds than I have high explosive. I never use the high explosive, or I should say I haven't used them yet. I do keep them there because I do expect that I will use them at some point. I am using the hull reinforcement in my universal retrofit slot just to get that little bit extra HP, and it again, the way I play, it really does come in. I haven't yet unlocked the firepower retrofit slot, and when I do, I might get the improved shell casing retrofit that you unlock on the BMD series, just because it increases your moving accuracy. Though with the 30mm chain gun, that's not all that big of a deal, and the targeting reticule is so small to begin with, but it's also, you're gonna move, if you're moving, you're probably up in close. And you have 30 rounds, so missing one shot out of 10 isn't going to cause nearly the significant loss of damage potential as, say, in a T-72 or a T-80. And that's those are my thoughts on the vehicle itself. That's what I play it as and how I play it. I hope you guys really enjoyed the video today. Remember to hit the like button, subscribe, comment below with suggestions, improvements that you think I can make. I am constantly trying to get better at YouTubing, so as I do more and more videos, you'll see more and more improvements. This is Captain Rye, signing off.